All right. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to those who are here for the first time. This is the Public Space Research Group training for the 2023 New York State Park Centennial Study. So yes, it's a mouthful. I hope I got the title right. So excited to see everyone back. And we really enjoyed Friday. And as I say, I hope last Friday, I hope people have been able to find the Google folder where we have the recording. If you're new to the program here, the recording from last Friday's training is in that folder. The agenda from last week is in that folder. An agenda for today's meeting is in that folder, and some other things are in that folder and will also be placed in that folder as we go along here. So that's the place to be. And if you are not able to find that folder, let me know. We have some great assistance from Olive, who will drop their email into the chat. So if you have any questions throughout the training, you can also contact Olive. So I want to welcome everyone back. I want to welcome Setha Lowe here, who is the director of the Public Space Research Group. Do you want to say anything, Setha, as by way of saying hello, as you're on mute?
I guess that's a good start. Good morning, everybody from East Hampton, and really excited to be here. Sorry I couldn't be here Friday, and looking forward to getting to know you today. And I am also available for email questions at any time. Just so you know that I'm around and available.
Great, thank you. And I want to invite Nathan Romine to say hello, who's also a team member who wasn't here the last time.
Hey everybody, it's great to be here. I'm excited to work with you all on this project and learn a little bit more about the individuals that we'll be working with at the parks that I'll be overseeing.
Great, thank you. So anyone else want to say hello? Hello, hello?
Hello.
We like to start with some silly icebreakers just to get people going here. And so today, if you don't mind humoring us, we would like for you to drop into the chat how you were feeling today in a word. Choose a word and drop it in the chat. How are you feeling today in a word? Let's see what words we get. That's our big icebreaker. Excited, blobby, exhausted.
Oh my God, blobby is the best thing I've ever seen.
Smoky, caffeinated, great, ready.
I don't know how to spell it. How do you spell harried?
Harried.
Harried.
Waterlogged. Not caffeinated enough. Oh, harried. Great,
we're in California. I'm stoked. Along with Nathan.
Content, excited. What else do we have?
A real mix.
Groggy. I hear you. Hype. Okay. That's great. More groggy. Yep, definitely nervous. Okay. All right. Those are some we're off to a great start. We're off to a mixed start anyway. This is going to be good.
Well, everybody should go get their coffee now or their tea. I have my tea. It's okay to drink tea and munch on cookies when you're online. That's the one thing about virtual meetings, right, Diana? You can sit there and sip and munch. So feel free to sip and munch. with your mute on.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's get started. So I want to feeling the vibe. Thanks. That's a great expression. So I want to just start by summarizing where we left off and where we're going to go today. Last time we were together, we had an introduction to the centennial activities and to the goals of the program and to why we're doing this study to begin with and why we're working together. And then we had some time to talk about the structure of the study of our approach to study who's coming to the parks, how do they use the parks, and how do people view the park services and amenities and so forth. And we started to talk about our approach to the instrument, the structure of the instrument, what questions are involved. And we started to talk about how, easy or difficult it might be to ask some of those questions. And I think one of the biggest outcomes that was really great for me was just the amount of feedback and, that we got from folks who are participating, from you all, basically. And the feedback continued to come during the week, and we've incorporated some of the feedback. I think some of the feedback we still have to incorporate, but I just really appreciate the engagement with the conversation, and I appreciate the observations that people have been making about the study, about the instrument, about approaches to take. And it's just been really constructive and positive. So I think Friday was very exciting. It was an exciting first step. So that's how we got started last week. For today, as I said, the agenda is in the folder. We're going to talk a little bit more about approaches to rolling out the survey, to asking the survey, how to ask, strategies, as well as how to situate ourselves doing this field work. And I think this is a really important discussion, because it's interesting that, we're all, like many here, are employed by the parks. And so you're playing kind of two roles, one being an objective, collector and researcher of data, while also maintaining your role in the park. And that conjures up some very interesting issues, dilemmas, and we want to be able to talk about some of that today. So we'll be hearing from Setha, who's going to give us a talk about some key ideas for us to think about entering the field and gearing up to ask questions. So we'll sort of take it to the next level in that conversation. While we had started it a little bit on Friday, we'll be talking more about it. We're also going to have some time for a breakout session today before the end of the first half and before we go on break. Well, we'll have a chance to actually practice the instrument. We'll say more about that when we get there, but we just want to give it a try. We had asked folks to give it a try over the weekend since we last saw each other, and I'll ask if anybody gave it a try in just a minute. So we'll get some hands-on practice with the instrument and have a discussion. Then we'll go on break, and then when we come back from break, we're going to talk about ethics and safety. And we'd really like for this conversation to be collaborative. We know lots of folks in the room have lots of expertise on this topic already, so we'd like to approach it collectively and start by hearing from park managers and others, and sort of the code of ethics that are already in operation in work in parks. And then we'll add the public space research folks will add some thoughts to that. And we worked up a cheat sheet on some key ideas about ethics and safety in the park. And we'll talk about adding, revising, and co-constructing our own guideline and codes of ethics for our work this summer. And I think that will basically do it for module 3 for today's conversation, and we'll end by talking about what's next, what will happen next between today and then the time when we see you in the field. So
Can I add something, Suzanne?
Yeah.
I just want to thank everybody again so much for being here. We know it's a really large ask, and just want underscore that this is the last synchronous meeting, right? So everything after this will be asynchronous, and we appreciate your time today again.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So just before I turn it over to Setha, I wanted to quickly ask if anyone did have a chance to practice the survey. Did anyone give it a try? Any crickets? Oh, we have someone at the
Someone
end
in the
here.
chat, and also Michael Boyle gave us the thumbs up.
Okay. Oh, good. So we're going to go. Thank you for giving it a try. I really appreciate it. We'll talk more about that and how it went, whether it was easy or difficult. Can you give us an emoji that tells us an initial emoji reaction? How did it go? Smiley face, brownie face from Mike.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. All right. Well, let's hope it goes best. All right. A little more practice.
All right. Well, that gives us something to work with now. All right, Setha, I'll turn it over to you. You want to?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen, but I just to say to everyone, even something like a survey, which everybody is considering simple, right, Michael? Nothing is simple when it comes to trying to talk to another human being. All right. And I just think and it's not, I've been doing this for, we won't even say how many years, but it's never simple in that sense that you're always going to feel something. And Michael, I'm not surprised that we got a sort of mixed emoji. So let me talk about some, let's see, I'm going to share, hold on. Let me make sure that you've got your screen sharing, but let me open it up. Let me also go into slideshow. Now, play from start. How's that look, everyone? Is that the full screen for you or more? Yeah, I can't see you, so I have to assume
It
it's
looks
fine.
good.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a variety of different things, but the overall message is that, yeah, it's a little more complicated than you think. And therefore, to realize that it's something, a skill that like anything else that you learn to do, and it's also an emotional and personal skill that some of you are going to feel more comfortable with and others are going to feel less comfortable. And that is okay. It does not affect the quality of what you're doing, but what you feel and what you do could be different for every single one of you. And I just want to reassure you that it is exciting. It's a different way to experience the world and people. Asking questions of people is very different. And some people who you talk to are going to be used to being interviewed or handed a survey and know the script, and you're going to feel a little more confident and comfortable. Others, however, are going to think that anyone who comes up to them is going to have a conversation and that it's not an interview and that it'll feel very different. And part of doing this and part of what I hope the enrichment for yourselves for having this experience is learning how to go from a conversation to an interview and maybe even back, and how to feel by the end of the day and certainly the second day, feel more competent, feel more comfortable, and know that this is now a skill that you've developed. Now, there are a number of issues that come up immediately when you confront another person, and we call it the insider-outsider dilemma. Whoever it is that you are, that means in your body, in your age, in your ethnicity, race, class, ability to move, all of that is something that you are positioned in. It forms who you are asking another person a question, and that other person is going to assess and react to who they think you are, and they will try to answer with regard to who you are. And you could say, well, that doesn't make it very objective. You know, what do I do about that? But all social science is subjective. It's about two people exchanging knowledge, or two people, one asking for someone's knowledge and another one giving it. So it's a privilege. It's something we'll talk about under ethics, but it's also one that can be a little fraught. And the way we deal with this is to think about, you know, is this someone who I am like, similar, who will see me as like them, or is this someone who is very different and that would see me as, in my case, I'm an older, white, half Jewish, older woman, you know, and professor worse, if you know, and so it puts me in a kind of power relationship sometimes, especially trying to interview youth now. When I was a youth, when I was young and in the field, it wasn't a problem. Very different things happened. But now I have to kind of work on doing something about modulating and being able to relate to that person, to let them know that I am respectful of who they are, and I'm not like who they are, and that I have to work a little harder. And that's what the insider-outsider dilemma is really about. For those of you sort of interested in this process, there's big arguments whether it's better to be like the people you interview. So when I worked in gated communities, I worked with homeowners, and they all thought they were me, and they were really comfortable with me. I looked like them, I talked like them, they felt I had values like them. So it was really interesting to interview, versus being an outsider when I go into an all African-American community with a group of teens, let's say on a basketball court, in which I'm an outsider. And there's great debate about whether you can do a better job as an insider or outsider, something we may want to talk about. You learn different things. That's what you need to remember. You learn slightly different things. But in this case, we have given you a script. And what we want you to be able to do is try to feel as comfortable as possible with the difference or with the similarity, and simply be aware that the person that you're interviewing is relating to you as an insider, outsider. Does anybody have any questions? Does that make sense? I can't see you. So you have to you have to unmute and talk and tell me if that makes sense. Because if you can do this, know who you are in relationship to who you're talking to, then you can begin to account for what's going on in that interaction. Let me show you the next slide. Where I cannot see you. Can anyone give me a sense of, okay, is that clear enough?
I'm following, Setha.
Okay, you're following, but right. Okay, so I'm going to go to something just a little more complicated. I know this may be a little more than you want to know, but I think it will help you when you get in the field. I guess you have to trust me. All right. I've been doing this a long time. Part of dealing with this insider outsider, making yourself comfortable kind of thing, is to think about what it is that you're doing when you're doing this survey. It is what we call a form of meta communication. It's a speech event. An interview is not a conversation. It's not a word challenge. It's not chit chat. It's not a lot of things. We have all kinds of speech acts that we are involved in. This is one in which one person normally asks a question and another person has agreed, we'll talk about that in a minute, to answer the question and respond. And that an interview then is a kind of speech act, a kind of meta communication. And what makes it successful or less successful are some concepts that I'm not asking you to learn. I just want you to hear me talk about them, just so you know that all of this is going on. First of all, there's the channel. That means, are you using your voice or are you on a telephone? In this case, you're going to be talking to people one-to-one, but are you having to translate? I mean, are you interviewing someone in which I'm thinking maybe the younger child might be translating for you. Are you speaking in Spanish rather than in English or in another language? The channel is, in all of our cases, will be using the voice, but there are other channels by which you're communicating, right? Your body language, how you're standing, how you're moving. See how much I'm moving when I talk to you? I tend to move when I talk. So no, but that influences the channel. And sometimes the person I'm interviewing will start to move with me, which is something that human beings tend to do. There's a social situation. The social situation in this, we're trying to call an interview. And within that, there's the interviewee and the interviewer. Some people are going to know about interviews and others are not going to have ever been interviewed. Maybe not too many, but it's possible. It is possible you're going to come across people who are not used to somebody coming up and saying, look, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your experience in the park today. And they won't even know their role. So that makes the situation a little more complicated. You might also need to help them take the role and try to explain, I'm going to ask you a question and I'd like you to tell me the answer if you're willing, you know, something like that. There's the key and the genre. That means the tone. I assume all of you know we want to try to be friendly. We're asking people for information about how they use the park, and we're also trying to be helpful. In all fairness, the reason at least I do this work and so many of us do this work is we want to make our parks better. We want people to feel comfortable and to really find the kind of enrichment and flourishing that our state parks offer so many people. But key, your tone, your key, the way you say your words will communicate. And then there are interactional goals. I hate to say this, but depending on who you are, people will use the interview situation to for different goals. You may be wanting to do an interview, but say when I was a young woman in a plaza in Latin America, not trying to be, you know, stereotyped here or not, but I would go up to a young man or a middle-aged man actually in Latin America, and they would think that I was trying to flirt with them when I thought that I was trying to interview them. Does everybody understand what I'm sort of saying? So the conversation went in a completely different way so that their reactions to my questions were very different. This was nothing I said. It just goes back to the first slide. It's who you are in relationship to that person might change the interactional goals, which is, again, I told you these are things you're going to learn. How do you establish that you're an interviewer? Again, if this is the first time you've done this, I know a lot of you are very experienced and might say, oh yeah, Setha, you know, I know what you're talking about. But for those of you that it's a first experience, just remember that you know why you're there and you know what you're trying to do, but the other person may have other goals in mind. For instance, they may want to simply know where the bathroom is and not interview your thing. They may want to ask you if you have something that they need. There can be many interactional goals. I've already talked about that an interview is this kind of communicative event. Reference here means that it's going to be hard in your, I think with a survey, you're going to be all right, that the referential errors will not be so complicated. I think that you're telling them it's about the park, it's for the centennial, but sometimes there's a little confusion between the interviewer and the interviewee of what you're talking about. Are you going to ask them, what are you doing today? Or when we get into the breakout, we can all work on that. You know, they may somehow conceive of a question is very different than the one you think you're asking. And they'll let you know, and it can get worked out. And it's really fascinating to watch how it gets worked out. But just, again, something to keep in mind. And I've already mentioned what are the roles? The roles ideally will be the interviewer and the interviewee. But you will probably use conversation to ease into the situation. And I'll conclude with that. Okay, this is for those of you, this is the enrichment level of the the talk for those of you who've been interviewing a long time and are really bored already with this conversation because you've already heard all this stuff before, and you know who you are, you know about subjectivity, you know about power relations, you know that all interviews ultimately are they're as objective as we try to be. We're subjective because it's two people coming together with all the dynamics that happen between us, right? We're all together on this. You know, any time you and another person are interacting, there is this subjective interpretive level. So when that happens, there can be a lot of what we call in the literature linguists. These are terms from linguists who think about interviews from a linguistic point of view, again, as a speech act. And there are these errors. They aren't really errors. That's just what they're called. But what's interesting about these two terms is that there are two ways that an interview, well, there's more than two, but there are two particular ways that interviews can go off track, or a survey. And you will feel when it happens, but I'm going to try to explain what it was happening. And it goes back to what I was saying before. Referential errors is when you and the person you're interviewing think you're talking about the same thing, and it's not. Okay, so I always use this example. Usually I get into this in Spanish. I was interviewing in Cuba, and I asked someone, you know, what was the biggest change he had seen? And he said to me, no hay mariposas, which is there aren't any butterflies, which would be the first translation of the word mariposa. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty ecological kind of statement. You know, that was a pretty interesting thing. And I said, well, why do you think there aren't any? Because a second meaning of mariposa, which is not a nice meeting, but it is also a term that is used in Spanish, not so derogatively, but for someone who is a male homosexual, gay man, usually. So I also thought that seemed like a very strange conversation to have gone into. And he said, and I said, well, tell me more about the mariposas, because describe, you know, what do they look like, whatever. Turns out mariposa is a kind of flower. I didn't know. In fact, it's the national flower of Cuba. And that it used to grow in front of, you know, in front of everybody's houses. And actually, I don't know what ecological thing had happened, but there were no mariposas. So in fact, even more than there were no flowers, there were no national flowers. The interpretation of what I was told was completely different. That is a referential error. That means that the word, in this case, mariposa, which is probably not going to happen to you in English, but some of you interviewing in Spanish or in French or something, you can get into this kind of trouble, but it can happen in English. It means that you think a word means one thing and somebody else means another. And if you pick it up, it would be great to clarify it. You will find that you're going to enjoy your interviewing time a lot better if you clarify it and begin to learn that. The other is the kind of thing I was talking about, that when I was a very young researcher in the field and I go up to someone, in my case, as a white heterosexual young woman, it would be, say, a young male, and he thinks that I'm flirting and I think that I'm a doctoral student asking questions. And that is called an indexical error. It's an error that the whole context, the whole social context, I'm keep trying to think of better examples than that, but there are lots of examples, and you're going to feel them. You won't, it's hard to see them, but if you need to use the context that you're in to know if an indexical error is coming out, and where it might be, I don't know how significant it'll be in this questionnaire, but people, at least insofar, the index might be that you are there to learn what they don't like about the park, or you're there to learn about how wonderful the park is, and you don't really want to know what kind of experience. And what you really want is to get as close to a real or honest or truthful or whatever, authentic, whatever words you want, response. You really do want to know how people are experiencing the park and who they are, and do they, so an indexical error, an error of what's going on, can change what people are going to say to you. It might not be so much in the examples I'm giving you, but it's like when I'm in the plaza in Latin America, or even in a park, and somebody thinks I'm a reporter versus an anthropologist asking question, or someone who is when I talk to a vendor and they think I'm a tax collector, right? I mean, does that give you some sense that people don't know? Kevin, yeah.
So I'm so glad that you're talking about this. I'm thinking back to the work at Jones Beach and this concept of indexical errors. One of the things that I encountered in that research was folks immediately thought I was there to either proselytize some religious, idea, or to ask for money. And so my strategy for establishing rapport and sort of, ameliorating all of that tension was to immediately come out and say, I'm not here to ask you for money or talk about religion, right? And people sort of chuckled, but it immediately got rid of that. And so I don't know, you had me thinking about that.
That's a really good idea. Okay. And for each of you, when we go into our practice, if you're finding, Michael, I don't know where Michael, I can't see you, I'm sitting here with share screen. You've been here. Michael, I mean, if you did try it, does any of this resonate with why it felt awkward, or do you think you might do it differently? I can't see you. You'd have to just unmute and tell me. I think he doesn't. Can't hear me. All right, moving right along.
Okay, well, am I unmuted now?
No, you're unmuted now. I can hear you. Yes, cool.
All right. It wasn't really much with that with me with the survey. It was I was having issues with the flow of the content. I was just playing around with the flow of the content, mixing the questions around a little bit that I felt would be a little bit easier, and hoping that I could come through as more of a conversation with folks than just dictatorial, asking a question, waiting for a response, and that. So I was just kind of playing around with that, seeing if I could come to a little bit better flow for myself so that I could feel it more of a conversation. So
fantastic. So Michael, do you want to talk to everybody for just a second? I think I'm doing okay on time. I only have one more slide. Why that might be an important thing. Why are you more comfortable in a conversation than doing it as an interview, in this sort of survey questionnaire style? Want to say anything more?
Sure. I mean, for myself, I want to put the person that I'm going to be interviewing at most ease as possible, and I feel by doing that, by having a conversation style with someone, it won't be like that. Again, are you asking me about religion? Or are you going to take my wallet from me? That sort of thing. I just don't want it to be like them looking at me as dictating to them, or almost them wanting to hear, or me wanting to hear a specific response from them. I don't want them to feel that in any way. I want them to really be honest with me. And I think the best way to do that is in an open conversation. I mean, the way I kind of was working it is that 3 or 4 questions I could probably answer in the first 60 seconds with them, just by asking them the questions. Oh, hey, how are you? Is this your first time at the park? And that sort of thing. And then going through there, I just felt it would roll through for me a little bit better. And again, putting someone at ease right off the bat, as opposed to, fisticuffs up or defense mechanisms getting put up right off the bat, and not even listening to what I had to say and just walking away. And I mean, I know I'm going to get those folks. There's going to be a dime a dozen on that end, but, hopefully I can interact and connect. And again, obviously the normal things, eye contact, body posture, and those sorts of things will definitely make a difference, I think, in my approach to people.
Okay, I think I figured you have just covered all. I don't have to worry about my lecture. You've pretty much covered everything here now at the end. So we talked about number 3, but number 4, how would you get started? So Michael would start a conversation and create rapport. And one of the questions I think that we want to ask, let's see, we have some questions that we'll do it right after I'm finished, is how would you begin? Michael's saying he wants to start by trying to turn the interview more into a conversation. Others of you may want to use different strategies. Sometimes it's enough just to walk up and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and you know, I work for the park, and I'm really curious, you know, to learn a little bit about your experience today. But you're quite right, Michael's right, that people might be very defensive and wondering why you're walking up to them at all. You know, one of the things I'm suggesting to Michael on number 5 is think about the other person and their discomfort at being stopped. Figure out what would make you more comfortable if it was you, and then try it. In other words, I wouldn't know till I got to a particular park how to do that, but I would try to imagine being them. And then, because on the spot, different strategies might work in different parks. Different strategies are going to work for different people. And part of doing this job, part of becoming a researcher, and as I said in the beginning, it's a different experience. It is not quite as simple as it seems. It's actually takes a lot of you as a person, and part of that is figuring out what would make you comfortable and then using that to make someone else comfortable. Because Michael's strategies is conversations, and I could say for some cultures that won't work. That a much more measured formal style may work with certain people that you walk up to. It's not going to be the same for everyone. I mean, right, Kevin, that sometimes people would offer you, if you wanted, you know, would you like to join us to have a you know, piece of our barbecue or something like that, that it's through food. But there are all kinds of strategies. But the important thing to remember is to realize, I'm on number 5 here, if you want to see where I am, realize it's not about you, that it's not personal, that it isn't anything about who you are, but it's about a process and the role you're in, and that it's not always comfortable. So I'm ending a little bit where I started with, is entering the field. Now I'm going to 3, is not always so comfortable. It depends. Those of you who work in your own parks and are familiar with the parks and might even know some of the users, you're going to feel pretty comfortable. Some of you are going to blend in, and you know, they're going to be, I don't know, young people like yourselves who love to be out in the woods, and you know, they're building a relationship, and rapport is going to almost happen magically. But on the other hand, maybe you don't blend in. You know, when I go and do this, you know, I don't blend in so much as I used to anymore. And I'm not much of a hiker. Right now, my knee is torn, which is why you haven't seen me much. So I'd be hobbling along, you know, and but maybe someone coming by with a cane or a wheelchair, an older person, might be able to relate to me really well. And I might, in fact, learn a little bit more what it feels like to be a person with not full ability to experience the park. But it's going to matter, but it's not about you in the sense of that you should be feeling bad or uncomfortable or whatever, but it is about understanding that you are the instrument. Now, I'm just about done. Numbers 1 and 2, Sue, I think we should, you know, we've talked about that you're going to be interviewing every 5th person, but we do probably need to talk about what exactly it means if that 5th person says no. What if the person is too young? We've decided that you're not interviewing people under 18 years of age. What if it's someone whose language competency you don't have and there isn't someone to translate? I do think that we maybe in our discussion, Sue, spend a minute or 2 going over this, because I think it's something we all need to decide. Patrick too, you know, want to weigh in on this. And then we are not doing informed consent in the sense of anthropologists literally get a signed piece of paper that it's all right to be doing this interview. But you want the consent and agreement of the person before you begin to ask a question. And that means you need to be able to explain what we're doing well enough that they can make an informed choice. Is that clear enough that they, that you're going to ask them some questions about their experience in the park, that it'll be in our script. Anna, you want to put I see you there. I don't know whose hand is up, but please go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering, so with informed consent, would we have to get verbal consent, or would it have to be like expressed written consent?
No, it's just verbal in this case, right, Sue? It's just verbal for these kinds of surveys. Actually, IRB, because there is no identifying information on this at all. So therefore, these are by their very nature anonymous. There would be no way actually for you to be able to trace that either sheet of paper or that record to the person you spoke to. Which is how it is that you don't need to have informed consent. But what I'm saying to you is you want to always, now I'm as young or trainee social scientists or whatever, however you imagine yourselves to be doing this kind of work as researchers, you always want to be clear about what you're doing and make sure that the person is truly in agreement that it's okay for you to ask questions, that you are asking something. I think that we're going to get into this in the second hour in much greater detail. What is it to be extractive, whatever, but sometimes why I have it here on entering the field is just like Michael was saying, he uses conversation. The other thing that goes on in this moment, in this first moment, is negotiating participation. In other words, you need to spend a moment or two to explain what it is you're doing, what it's going to be about. The person needs to agree. And in a sense, you are actively negotiating whether they will participate or not. And again, I suggest that you think about this question is, believe it or not, I'm one of those people that doesn't like to answer surveys. I realize this about myself. I didn't know this. Those that come online all the time, I almost never do them, which is terrible of me. I know it's a moral flaw, but anyhow, I think you have to ask yourself, why would you answer a survey if you were stopped entering a park? I mean, if Kevin had gotten me going to Jones Beach, oh, you wouldn't want to get me, and you wanted to stop me from getting my spot on the beach or whatever.
Oh, I'd have found a way.
I would have been a toughie. I'm a real beach person and I'm ready to go and I'm speedy. And so you'd have to really think about, you'd have to appeal, in my case, to me wanting to make Jones Beach better and to be able to, I have a recent book called Why Public Space Matters. And in there's a chapter on Jones Beach and why it's so important for democracy and a sense of freedom and a sense of belonging. And it's really important material that we offer there, that you can really see how Jones Beach transforms people in a way that they feel they belong here, no matter who they are. Here meaning in America, here with other people. And it's quite a powerful feeling that is created there. And you may well find that in your parks. That's really important. That's important because I don't think in general, non-parking people know that. They do not know. The general public is not aware of how important these areas are to the people who use them and to people who might come in the future. We could lose our parks, you all know that. And so it does matter. I think the stakes are high. And with that, I'll end.
Great. Thank you. So interesting. And a lot to think about. Would anyone like to ask a question or follow up or add a comment or anything resonate here? Dana Taplin.
My thought is the indexical era that Setha was talking about, that, many of our interviewers are park staff, and whether there's a potential for people in the park to feel like they're being, about to be told that they're doing something wrong, or that they might be I don't
Yeah.
know, informed that they should be sitting over there instead of over here or whatever. I mean, I don't know if park staff have any thoughts about that, but that there could be a perception versus, say, I don't know, one of the summer interns who don't work in the park already and may have familiarity with it, but don't have that sense of or wouldn't be perceived by the visitors as officials.
What do you think, guys? What do you think? Park people, you want to say anything?
I think he's absolutely correct. I mean, my experience has been when we approach people at their tables, whether you're just saying, good morning, how you doing? Want to let you know something. Immediately right off the bat, a lot of times they don't answer you. They just stare at you and they want to know what's coming next. What are they doing wrong? I mean, that's been my experience. And it's particularly in the summer when we're doing the survey, that's the sort of response we get. And that may be because we do enforce our rules here at parks. You can't just come here and do whatever you want. We have rules. We ask people to abide by them and we follow up on that. So I agree wholeheartedly with that, with his statement that that's how we're perceived.
Okay, Scott, so let's think about, could you wear a sign? Today I want to, I mean, is there something funny we could do? Is there a label you could wear? Is there anything we could do that would communicate that the role you're in at this moment is different than as in park enforcer? Do you know what I'm saying? Is there anybody have any idea? Because I think that's very real, Scott. And I think you're going to, it's not going to be very pleasant, right? Walking up to people, that's going to be pretty unpleasant.
I mean, we do that day in and day out. I'm not just only speak for myself and our staff here. We have no hesitation about approaching people we don't know. That's part of the job. So I really have no hesitation with that. And a lot of the other staff, I'm assuming, would agree with me. You get used to it at a certain point in your career, but on the flip side, people don't want to be approached, and they always assume that when you approach them, you're going to tell them something they don't want to hear.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, Sue, can we
in our parks too, in our parks here too. I mean, you go try to approach someone and talk to them. You a lot of times they have music going so loud, they won't even be able to hear what you're saying, and then you go to ask them to turn the music down. Well, now you're affecting their visitation, their enjoyment of the park, and right off the bat, you're getting off to a bad note.
All right, Kiris.
Yeah, Lori, hi.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, can you see me or you can hear me?
I can
right?
see you and hear you.
Okay, cool. Well, I was thinking about these questions. I was thinking, oh yeah, I would like to have a parks hat on or something when I ask these questions. I'm going to Roberto Clemente, and I've lived in New York City for 20 years, many years ago. So I called my friend Dwight in the Bronx because I knew he would know this park. And he just said, Lori, he said, what you need to do is you should set up a table right outside the park, to have people because he said there's a big entrance. And he said, but really you want to dress like a clown or something to get attention. He said, why don't you just bring a bunch of balloons? He goes, that would get people to want, of course, to talk to you. And then he said, of course you need to give them something. I hope you have good little, treats or something, But he said, yeah, it won't be easy, but it'll you'll be able to work it out. So I just want to bring that because I still feel like I kind of want to wear a parks uniform, and I wanted to ask about that too. So.
And I think I'm Kate from Hempstead Lake, not too far from Roberto Clemente. But I think we talked about maybe setting up a table outside with our environmental staff and maybe bringing out a turtle or something so that they come to us.
Right.
And then, don't get me wrong, we're going to have to go into the picnic area and it's going to be uncomfortable and they're going to ignore us and they're not going to look at us. But at least the people that are at the ice cream trucks down here on the island or coming over to see the environmental staff that have something really cool and exciting, it just may help us down here just because it's a little bit different clientele than in other areas.
Yeah. Patrick, you're next in queue.
Yeah, to the question about incentives, we will be doing giveaways for folks. There'll be hand sanitizer or sunscreen for folks who respond. And we still have to work out the logistics for this, but folks that will take the survey can also be entered into a raffle for an Empire Pass. So at least that will help hopefully get some folks to opt in to do the surveys.
Okay. Any other, we've got some great suggestions here in the chat also. Sue, I'm turning it back over to you. Did you?
No, yeah, I think any other comments would be welcomed. I see a lot of comments in the chat about incentives, as well as just framing yourself through clothing
Yeah.
or some kind of identifying thing. I mean, we talked about wearing badges or something that might not be visible enough.
Yeah.
T-shirts might be better, actually.
Yeah. I love the turtle idea. Yeah. Olive's ready. I'll do anything to hang out with a turtle. I feel the same way. I don't live that far from Hempstead. I better come over and see your turtles, you know, but that all of these are great ideas. What I think, Sue, I'm reacting also, though, we need to think about this. Hold on, from Nicole. Handed out ice cream to the people who completed the survey. Well, I'm lactose intolerant, so I wouldn't need it. No, what I think this is great, and this kind of brainstorming, and we can go into, when we go into our breakout groups, I think we can work some more on this. What my message also, though, is to you, and Dana, thank you so much for bringing this up, and thank you, Scott, for, I could really feel how hard your work must be in the summer. I don't know what park you're at, but you know, I've been studying parks a long time. I have some idea. The other thing, the takeaway is that whatever you do, whatever we decide, whether it's turtles or somebody turning a cold shoulder, or they have to turn down the music and don't want to, or whatever, that changes the dynamics and will change what you get. And that's okay, but it's important that you note it, and that, you know, I don't think we're doing field notes, but that you tell your lead, right? So that there be some record of that, of how much, you know, sort of pushback you're really getting. When is it easy? Because it's going to change, I think, what people will say to you. So that's one of my things, is that, you know, if your relationship to people is mostly of, you know, following the rules, which it has to be, then it's really going to be hard to create a kind of different kind of rapport just out of the blue. I hadn't really thought about the music. I thought, let's talk, you want to talk a little bit about sampling, about where this is happening, or will each lead be deciding, you know, whether you're going up to people at tables, or if you're getting them before they are seated and sitting down, that you're working at entrances.
Yeah, I think we still need to actually, and this is for Patrick and Diana, need to kind of, and for the park managers, like find out from folks in the park where the best places would be to position ourselves. Because I think in our last session, we had a really good conversation about different areas leading us to talk to different types of visitors, and therefore we might want to be in a couple of different entrance points or different areas in order to capture a broader range of, you know, views from visitors. These decisions actually have to be made collectively, as, you know, you all who work in the parks have a better sense of what the best places would be.
We have a hand, Montefius.
Yeah, hi. It was my understanding the last conversation last week that we had was that we need to move around the park to get different, because different parts of the parks are utilized by different people. So just using Jones Beach as an example, you're going to get fishermen,
Right.
West End,
Right.
and birders and nature lovers. Then if you go to Central Mall, you're going to get
Right.
more birders and beach goers, and people from the city as
And
well.
Zack's Bay, you're going to get the moms and the kids. Yeah.
Family, yeah. So is that is still something that's important to make sure we get like a array of the people that come to the park?
I
Right.
think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think that's something that we need to discuss with the team who knows the park best, you know, whether we position ourselves or whether we, you know, and try to capture people as they come across a threshold or an entrance point, or if, you know, our chances of, you know, collecting data more effectively would be, you know, best strategized if we actually walked through areas and met people. I mean, both of
Yeah.
these are fine. These are both acceptable approaches for collecting data. Sort of just depends on, you know, what works best at which parks.
Yeah. So was
Certainly,
it, yeah. I was going like Kate, Dana, go ahead.
I
Dana,
was
go
just going to
ahead.
say that there's some tension between, you know, setting up with a table and balloons and turtles and ice cream, and then you're not, you know, you can't move around very easily versus moving through the different areas. So I think we have to make those decisions as we go forward and learn more about each of these parks.
Right. Kate, you're on mute, Kate, but Hempstead Kate, I'm going to call her.
I just had a quick question. So at the end of the last meeting, there was just a little bit of discussion about using children as interpreters. And I think that at some point, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that someone had said that we don't really want to do that. I just don't know if we can have a one-off discussion specifically about Hempstead at some point before we get here in August, only because so much of our clientele on weekends does not speak English. And I don't
Right.
know if we can bring all of the interpreters we need to here. And we as staff use children all the time as interpreters because that's the only way sometimes to find children, find parents, or get help for parents because they don't speak English, but the children do. So I just wanted to put out there that some parts.
Okay, good. Yeah. Thank you. Sue, we're gonna have to decide that. What we were saying is that you don't want to be in, I mean, based on good, again, ethical practices. And when we come back, let's talk about this. That you don't interview children because children require a certain kind of consent. Back to Anna's, you know, question, you know, the kind of consent we get for children. Now, whether we can use children as interpreters, that's a whole nother thing. But of course, if you really don't speak Spanish, who's doing Hempstead? Kevin, do we have Spanish speakers?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be able to interview in Spanish.
Maybe I'll come to Hempstead instead, because I can interview in Spanish as well.
I mean, it's a really great question, Kate, and it's that kind of cultural brokering that so many children end up doing, right? I think I mentioned in our breakout last week that my wife grew up having to translate for her grandmother at the doctor, learned all kinds of things that she probably didn't want to know at 8 years old, right? And I just think that like that's placing a particular kind of labor onto children, and that's one way of looking at it. I get it. I'm not knocking you because I've done it also, but for this study, I guess I want to know the answer too. Are we firm in that decision that we won't be using children to sort of mediate?
Or not? Yeah, we have to decide.
Okay.
And
I think, yeah.
I just want to point out that, you know, I think with the Spanish speaking individuals, you know, we can cover that. We have a lot of Russian population here, we have a lot of Chinese, and I asked if it was Mandarin or not, and those aren't things that I necessarily know. We have a lot of Pakistani visitors. We have basically, we're sort of like a cultural international group here, and I don't know all of the languages in order to be able to interview people that come here on a regular basis. So that was just what I just wanted to put that out, and I know I'm not part in that. So, you know, just something to think about.
That's
Okay.
great.
We have a question of how many surveyors per day per park. Did that get worked out?
Yeah, I think we're hoping that each individual researcher would collect between 30 to 35 surveys in a day. So that could be that sort of, and that would be complete surveys.
Yeah, Nicole, we have at least 2 folks at every site. And some of the larger sites will have more folks than that.
And we have at least one lead in each side, or do we have two,
course.
Sue, in each?
Mostly one.
Mostly one.
But I think as we'll see how it goes and maybe try to have more
Yeah.
coverage.
Right, that's what we're hearing. All right, so Sue, that breakout rooms, you have to explain, because I haven't done this before with you.
So for the next half hour, we wanted to go off into breakout rooms and just give this survey a try. We propose doing something called the fishbowl, which is that 2 volunteers will give it a try. One person will be the interviewee and the other person will be the interviewer. And you just kind of talk it through, and then the rest of the group in the breakout session will make notes, take notes, make observations, and then the lead will debrief with everyone and sort of discuss how did it feel to do the interview, how did it feel to to answer the questions, and what did people observe, what thoughts do people have about doing this, how might we strengthen our approaches, what are the questions that remain unanswered about how to go about doing this. So we're going to try this for a half hour, and then we will
Take a break.
yeah, I think that would probably half hour at 10:30, take a break, and then return at 10:45, I think, and continue on. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Suzanne,
Yes.
just real quick, we have one more question.
Oh, yes.
What is park-specific amenity feedback, question number 12? Do you want to address that real quick?
So that's still up, that is a question that's still up in the air. There was a desire, Parks expressed a desire to have some specific questions about recent changes in the park. And, the public space research group was saying we'd need to know what those recent changes were, and, how to formulate that, because that would be a very specific question per park. The last conversation we had was that there was still discussion about it, and that maybe we would take that out of the survey, because it might be hard to coordinate for a specific question for each park. So, but that hasn't been nailed down just yet. So that's why it's highlighted in yellow. It's still being discussed as to whether it will be a part of the final instrument or not.
All right, now
leave it out in the practice.
Yeah, leave it out in the practice.
All right, but so the version that we're going to be using is in Google Docs, and the Google Docs, all of it's in here in the Setha and her Google Docs. It's in here.
Maybe Olive can
There
yeah,
it
there
is.
we go.
Google Docs. She's got it. I got it, Olive. Thank you. I just want to make sure I've got that right version. But
Right.
when okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Olive's going to send us off into different breakout rooms, hopefully more or less lined up with the leads and the folks that the leads would be working with in the summer, and we'll see how it goes. So we will see everyone back at 10:45. Enjoy your practice for the next 30 minutes.
Bye.
Bye. Hello. We're back. All right. Well, what do you think? Shall we give this a try? Can we have 2 volunteers? Someone who would like to do the interview or do the, pose the questions, and somebody who would like to answer the questions. And by answering them, you can invent answers. They don't have to be real answers. You can just create answers. With anyone brave enough to volunteer? Come on. Come on, come
I
on.
would love,
Oh,
I would love
answer
to
the
volunteer.
questions.
Okay, we have Tanya and Kelly. Oh, I'm grabbing you. You utter a word
I
and I
just
take
want to
you.
make sure, my service is not great here. So if I break up, don't feel bad yelling at me that you can't understand me.
No worries, no worries. We'll give it a try. So, Kelly, do you want to ask the questions? Tanya, do you want to answer them?
Can answer, that's fine.
Great. All right. And then everyone else, this is the fishbowl. They're in the fishbowl and we are the observer. So take notes on anything compelling that you see happening. Take it away.
Hello, I'm collecting information on behalf of New York State Parks for the upcoming Centennial Celebration, and we'd like to learn more about how you're using our parks and our services. Would it be all right if I asked you a few questions and got your answers? Everything's going to be completely anonymous, and we're not going to take down any of your personal contact information or your name with these answers.
That sounds good.
Excellent. My first question for you is, how often do you visit this park?
This is my first time.
Excellent. Well, welcome. I hope you're enjoying it so far. I know this is your first time, but would you consider coming back to visit in any other seasons?
You know, I haven't really been around the park yet, so I don't really know what I think of it in terms of other seasons.
Completely understand. If you have any other questions about the amenities that Fort Niagara can offer throughout other seasons, I'd be happy to answer those for you once we're all done. So this is your first time visiting, so obviously you're here on this day. Would you consider coming back on a weekend based on what you've already seen so far, or would you prefer not to answer that at this point?
I'd rather not answer.
No problem. We're here in the morning. I know, again, this is your first time visiting. Would you consider coming back in the evening if there was something to incentivize you to revisit? Again, you can choose not to answer this question if you're not comfortable, if you're not informed enough quite yet.
I'm probably going to stay here until like midday.
Excellent. If you have any questions, once we're all done, feel free to find me throughout the park as well. I'll be floating around. I'd be happy to answer for you. Who came with you to the park today?
I brought some people that I know from work. You know, someone is talking in the background. It's kind of hard to hear you.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Just 1 second. Let me close the door real quick. I'm just gonna close it real quick. I'm so sorry. I hope that's better.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So I'm glad that you're here with your coworkers. How many are there with you in this group?
There are, I think there's 6 of us today.
Excellent. All right. What do you plan on doing while you're here? You going for a walk, a jog, a hike, just people watching, bird watching, maybe sightseeing, just out visiting in general purposes? We have a pool here.
Yeah, we thought we would go to the beach and hang out and maybe do some swimming.
Excellent. I do want to advise you that the only place that you can swim in this park is in the pool. We're actually not allowed to go into the lake in this park. If you have any questions about that further, I'd be happy to inform you.
Not right now, thank you.
Okay. All right. So I have a series of questions that I would like you to rate on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being poor, 4 being excellent. You can also decline to answer any of these or rate any of these as well. Is that something you're comfortable doing and continuing with?
Sure, I'll tell you whatever I know so far.
Absolutely, excellent. So the staff courtesy and helpfulness, 1 to 4, 4 being excellent.
I'll give them a 3. They were pretty good at the entrance.
Excellent. Cleanliness of restrooms?
Haven't been to a restroom yet.
No worries. Conditions of the buildings that you've seen?
They look nice.
Perfect. Conditions of roads and parking lots and fields?
The parking lot was like the pavement is not in the greatest shape.
Thank you. I will make sure to make a note of that. Cleanliness of outdoor areas?
Looks really nice.
And usefulness of signs and maps in the park?
They could probably use a little bit more information about like the overall park on a sign or a map.
Okay, perfect. I'll make a note of that too. Access to information about events, publications, maps of the park?
Yep, I got online before I came here and looked to see if there was anything going on at the park. So that was helpful.
Awesome. Your safety and security that you feel in the park?
Oh, it seems fine.
How welcomed do you feel to be here?
Yeah, I guess I'd give it, a 3.
Quality of the recreation or educational programs, if you've had a chance to attend any.
Not yet.
Quality of the gift shop, if you visited.
And nope, not yet.
And then the quality of food concessions.
And not yet.
Okay. In your opinion, what needs to be improved regarding the facilities and services in the park? I will go ahead and list these for you if you want to tell me a yes or a no as to whether or not you feel it needs to be improved, just because of the format that we're doing this in today. The staff courtesy and helpfulness, yes or no to improvement?
To be improved.
Cleanliness of restrooms?
NA.
Conditions of buildings?
Looks good.
Roads and parking fields?
They could be improved.
Cleanliness of outdoor areas?
Looks fine.
Signage and maps?
A little improvement.
Information accessibility?
That was good.
Safety and security?
Good.
Efforts to make visitors feel welcomed?
I guess it was okay.
Okay. Quality of recreation or educational programs? Again, you can decline to answer if you haven't experienced any of these.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Quality of the gift shop?
Don't know.
Quality of food concessions?
Don't know.
Is there anything else that you feel can be improved within this park? And you can also decline to answer.
Nope. I don't know of anything right yet.
Okay. Can you say why and how the facilities and services in the park could be improved? I just asked you that. I apologize for repeating myself. All right. I have a few demographic questions. Would you mind me asking those?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Which age group do you belong to? 18 to 24, 25 to 34, or 35 to 44?
18 to 24.
Excellent. What is the highest level of education you have completed or in progress of completing? Less than high school graduate, diploma or equivalent, trade or vocational school, some college credit or no degree, and then an associate's, bachelor's, or graduate degree, or you choose not to answer.
Some college credit.
Okay. And then are you a veteran?
No.
Okay. What is your zip code? You can also choose not to answer.
No, 12477.
All right. And are you visiting from outside the US?
Nope.
What language do you primarily speak at home?
English.
And then if you don't mind me asking, how do you identify in terms of race or ethnicity?
I'd rather not. I think I'd rather not answer.
No problem. What do you have any physical, neurological, or mobility issues when visiting this park?
I have a hearing impairment.
How do you identify in terms of gender?
You
may choose not to answer.
I'd rather not answer.
No problem. Are you a member of any identity group that the park staff should know about that may have some special concerns? You may also choose not to answer.
Well, I'm here with my work colleagues, and we are part of a group, but I don't want to identify it.
No problem. Is there anything else that you would like to add that I have not asked about?
I don't think so.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to have this conversation with me. I hope it wasn't too burdensome, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the time in the park. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can find me floating throughout the park or in the nature center as well.
All right, thanks.
Clap, 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 clap. Well done, well done. Yeah. Raise the roof. Woo-hoo. Where's the confetti? Well, that was great. What are your thoughts about it? How did it feel? How did it feel to ask those questions? How did it feel to answer? What did you think? What were you thinking?
So being an environmental education assistant, I have to go out into the parks and talk to random strangers every day that I'm working. It's just kind of part of the job, but it was definitely different, like having a list of questions, especially more personal questions. I think the format also kind of throws me off that, I'm seeing these questions, whereas in an ideal world, I'd be showing them so that they could be seeing the list of answers and seeing that option to choose not to answer as well, rather than me talking verbally over the computer like this. You might not know that you have the option to not answer this question. or you might feel pressure to answer it if I forget to mention it in this format. So it's definitely, I think a lot of the nerves play into doing it virtually like this. But yeah, definitely different having a set list of questions that's not particularly akin to what I'm normally out there for.
I see. Tanya,
Yeah.
what are you?
Yeah, no, I think that the lists, it's the same kind of thing. I think in person, if you could either show them the survey so that you don't have to read through the whole list, because I started feeling impatient, especially, you know, if my answer was at the beginning of the list and then she was continuing to read the whole list. And, you know, I think that to me, I'm really aware of the time that we're taking from their, you know, their day off. And also I think that it was a little frustrating to take the survey because it was my first time at the park and I hadn't ever been, you know, didn't know the answers to a lot of the questions. So I felt like, oh, maybe you better go talk to someone who, you know, who's got a lot more experience with the park, you know. So those were kind of my takeaways from it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There are a lot of questions if, yeah, if you haven't been to the park, there isn't, yeah, you're not going to have a lot of things to say about it. How about, oh, Kelly, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, with that being said, because like it also I felt horrible continuing to ask you those questions, knowing that it was your first time that you might not have an answer to that. Would it be beneficial to, I know at least in my park, like they don't really start charging until after 10 because that's when the pool opens here. Would it be beneficial to have a conversation with like the lead here to maybe do the bulk of the surveys in the afternoon when people have been here already for a while and have gotten a chance to explore the park a little bit if that's what they're wishing to do? Like, would that be an option possibly to have that conversation?
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely have the conversation. I mean, I think you would see how it starts off because I don't know if that's, yeah, I mean, we do want to capture people in the morning. I mean, we're going to be there from, you know, on a weekday from, you know, 8 to, I think, what was it? 8 to 5 and 9 to 6. The idea capturing, so we do want to capture some people who are early, and it, you know, if it is the case that they just don't have a lot of experience and can't answer many of the questions, that's data too, I think, for the park to know about. But I think we are aiming to cover all the different hours, so you know, we will find people hopefully, as you say, in the afternoon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I also say that I appreciated when Kelly, I thought you did a great job of just trying to make me feel comfortable and saying, don't worry if you can't answer it, or you're welcome to not answer this one, and repeating that.
Nice. Maritza, you're saying we are feeling the same, that people would say, how long is this? And what if they walk away? Yeah, I think, well, let me say a couple of things about a few observations, some ways to make it a little bit shorter. I agree with what Kelly was saying, is that if you're in person and you can show the list, that does go quicker. People can, and it also helps bonding, you know, you're establishing rapport and you're showing and you're sharing, and you're not trying to, you know, you're not trying to hide anything, right? So I think that's really good to show. I wanted to comment that on number 13, the question that says needs improvement, I think that one is not necessary to read all the options. I don't think it was intended to be scored the way the Likert scale questions are being scored, the way the evaluation, you know, questions are being scored. I think these are just actually going to be available for you to check off really quickly. And again, if you want to share them and show them that these are the options, they may not be the universe, you know, the full universe of improvements that people want to talk about. So it was really, we were just looking for ways to kind of make this as quick as possible. So I would recommend not reading all the options and just letting people tell you from the heart, you know, what they feel needs to be improved, and for you to find it and check it off quickly. That would make that question go a little bit more quickly. other pieces of feedback? Other observations that folks made that they want to share? One thing I agree with what Tanya was saying about making someone feel comfortable by telling them you have the option not to choose. I was wondering what thoughts people had, though, if that strategy is played out in the beginning of the interview, and not asking it all the way every time in this sort of comprehensive way, because I mean, I think people get the feeling that, yes, I don't have to answer this if I don't want to. I think towards the middle, I was thinking it was an invitation not to answer, if you choose not to, let's get this over with, sort of a thing. So maybe, sort of asking that in the beginning and establishing that, that, yeah, you don't have to answer all these questions. But I think it becomes pretty clear by, some midway that the respondent would know that they don't have to. And so the interviewer doesn't necessarily have to kind of constantly remind the individual, thereby, encouraging them not to answer. That was just one other thought. Any other observations that anyone wants to share? Also, yeah, Kelly is saying, I agree. It did start to feel like I was pushing for no more. Right. Right. And especially, Kelly, especially when you knew that you learned that, Tanya hadn't visited the park many times. You might be thinking, oh, she's probably not going to say too many, have full answers for many options. So, yeah. Any other observations? Anyone want to share any other thoughts about it, or what do you think? Doable? Hard? Michael, you gave this a try, and you had a lot of questions earlier about how
yeah, I mean, I thought the ladies did fantastic. Again, it's never easy to do the practice version. It almost seems easier to just go out in the real world and do it, because the people you're asking don't know if you're doing it right or wrong, or the way you've been trained to do it, so to speak. But I got a great takeaway from this. As watching them do it, I think for myself, I think it's actually that I'm going to make sure that I have a copy of this survey, as well as provide a copy of the survey to the patron or to the guest that's going to be doing the responses. But my question to you then would be, do I offer them the opportunity to fill it out themselves as they're going through, and then I take their survey when they're done? Or does it make more sense to just provide them a copy and then still be the one to do the recording on my form of the sheet and do it that way?
I think whichever way is more efficient is okay. I think both methods are acceptable.
Okay.
You might find that, it takes people longer to do it themselves, and that's why, it's easier to ask, and then try to, navigate the conversation a little bit more quickly. But it could be that someone themselves may feel that it would be easier for them. And then I think what's important for the researcher is to make sure that they fill it out, because I'm thinking it's going to be on both sides of a page, and so there's
Sure.
a tendency to not fill the second part out, to not know that there's another page, and to, that can be a big problem.
Okay, yeah, I would make sure that, again, we wouldn't just be handing it to the individual and kind of like letting them do it on their own. We'd still go through, like Kelly, we'd still go through the process of touching on every question with them. But yeah, exactly, hopefully prompting them to do it a little bit quicker and to get through the thing.
Yeah.
But my other thoughts were making sure that, like you said, in the very beginning, letting them know that it's a strictly voluntary thing, that they can answer or not answer any of the questions, kind of blanket that. But the one thing I thought of maybe not doing that Kelly was doing is providing that extra information about the park inside that time frame, only because, again, we want to bang them in and bang them out as quickly as we can. Maybe to make sure, I mean, if I'm going to set up, I'm going to set up a table in a whole area, you know, where I'm doing the surveys, and I'm going to make sure that we have our park brochures and other stuff, you know, trail maps with us as well, so people can grab that information as they're walking away. Because if I'm reaching out to them and approaching them, they in turn, like we just saw in the mock situation, they may in turn have questions for me along the way. And so in order to speed that process up, maybe be able to provide them with a brochure, a handout, or you know, even someone else on the side who's not doing the surveys, let that person then be the one to answer all of the pertinent questions that they're asking about. Okay, what time does the beach open? When do the lifeguards go on duty? When's the golf course go on? Where do I get my food and that sort of stuff? So again, my goal is to make sure that I can bang these people in and out as quickly as can. And if I can get it to more like 6 to 7 minutes instead of 10 to 12, that's what I want to do. Because, you know, I mean, the reality of it is, based on what I'm looking to have done that day or each day, the number of surveys, I got to average about 6 an hour, and 6 an hour for an 8-hour day. You do the math. Even that is kind of just cutting the limits, the bare minimum of what we're looking for, you know, for these surveys. So, you know, I've got to try to find that happy medium along the way, or have a few more survey participants, you know, with me, you know, to get the numbers that we're looking to get.
Right. I think that's a really good point. Yes, to think about how many we're supposed to be collecting in order to hit a minimum number for the responses to have, you know, some validity to them. And it would be helpful if we had more folks helping, you know, to do the data collection, because I think 30 to 35 is 6 an hour, and that does sound, that's going to be kind of challenging. So yeah, I think a happy medium is a good question. I just wanted to also make a comment, and then I know Kelly has her hand up, is that because you were making an observation about the extra information about the park that's woven into the conversation. And we're going to talk more about that, I think, in the next session. Kelly, you at one point you were saying, I'll make a note of that, you know, which is really interesting. I think that this experience is really great because we get to learn a lot about people's experiences of the park, which is also, you know, our workplace. So we learn as we're going along, and it would be good to make notes of the things that people are saying anecdotally, in terms of things that they're concerned about or that they have questions about and so forth. There was one point where you mixed in also a comment about, I don't know if it was a comment about a park rule, or there was something it came across as a, like, we do this, but we don't do that sort of a thing. And I was wondering, I thought it was interesting because it was like shifting from the role of the interviewer to the role of the park representative, right? We do this, but we don't we swim here, we don't, you know, and I would encourage, but I want to talk about this because I really want to hear what everyone has to say about it. Maybe like limiting, unless people ask you about the rules, like not telling them, well, because I guess what everyone is saying is so difficult to get through the interview that any kind of, like, you know, not only are we extracting information from you, but we're also going to tell you how we're going to manage you might like limit people's enthusiasm for getting through it. That said, if someone has a question about something, it's important to answer it if you know the answer, in terms of, you know, the time that the resources are open and stuff like that. So this is something to think about. And I think it can be more complicated than even just providing information. There can be some real dilemmas about what park visitors are doing and saying, while park employees are trying to collect information and learn from them. And we'll be talking about that in the next half. Kelly, let's end with your last question, because I know everybody needs a break now.
Yeah, no, just going back to like what Michael was saying about having other staff members help collect these surveys in order to meet those minimums. Like, so say, for example, I run the nature center here and I have a seasonal employee that's with me on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. Could I leave like a handful of surveys with her after having a conversation about like ethics and how to go through this and all that stuff with her for people that come into the nature center to answer as well, to try to like add on to those minimum numbers?
It's a good, I mean, it's a good question. We want to sample randomly. So we want to be able to talk about like how many of those would we be collecting? You know, so I would say we'd probably be open to it. But I think that, you know, we're having a lot of conversations about how to go about doing this and so forth. So it might, there's a lot to bring that person up to speed on collecting it. And then there's the issue of random sampling. So I don't want to say no, because I also don't want us to leave any park without collecting enough data. So we might come down to that. But at the same time, I think we, you know, we also want to try to, you know, do it in a knowledgeable way and do it in a randomized way. So I think that's a great offer of a help, and that the lead should, you know, be in conversation and figure it out. I think you're in my group, I think, right? You're at,
I think it's Dana.
oh yes, that's right, Old Fort. Okay. Let's both mention it to him.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, great. I'm sure you all need a break, right? Shall we take a break? And we'll come back at 10:45. All right. Terrific job. Terrific, terrific, terrific. It's going to go well. It's going to go well. All right. Come back to the main room. I'm looking for my confetti. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. And my smiley faces. Ooh, I don't have any smiley faces. I have, ooh. All right. We will see you back at 10:45. Get some water, stretch out. And thank you. Thank you, Kelly and Tanya, for being in the fishbowl. You did great. Yeah.
Suzanne, are we breaking now? We're on break until 10:45. All right.
All right, we're coming back.
I'm here.
You're here.
I'm here.
And
Yeah, well, I've got lots of questions. That evaluation scale, oy.
tough, right?
And number 13 has got to be open-ended and they check it.
Correct.
13 and 14 end up
Yeah.
becoming redundant a little bit because in 13, they're already saying the how and why.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
13, though, is just what needs to be improved without the list. And then the probe anything else.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, yeah, because they've already just done it. But boy, that Likert scale, is there no other way? God, awful, awful.
Yeah. I mean, folks have been saying that that part would go easier. Anything with a long list of options would go easier if you like showed people what you were reading so that they could just see and indicate, and you could check off as you're going and be establish more rapport by showing and sharing the instrument.
And it's on an iPad, Sue? It's not paper. Well, it could be paper.
Doing all options. So, if you could do it on your phone, you could do it on an iPad, or you can do it on paper as well. We've also been saying the question has also arisen, can you just give the person the survey and let them fill it out themselves? And, I've been saying,
help them.
Yeah, that's okay to the extent that they fill it out completely. That could go quicker, although sometimes in my own experience it doesn't actually go quicker.
It doesn't go quicker. I don't. Yeah,
but it's an option. So this is an experiment, and we'll see how it goes. All right. So any other debriefing? Any thoughts that people want to share? How did it go in your practice? We could spend a few minutes debriefing about the practice.
Yeah. Anna, where are you? Oh, yeah. Patrick,
I was just going to say, I was just an observer in our breakout room, but it sounded like starting out the survey with more information about why the survey is being conducted and the need for the information would be helpful. I know this since I've been with this project for a couple months, but I'm sure a lot of folks are jumping into this fresh, and just having a little bit more language around the survey and the importance of the work would, I think, get the interviewee more invested in responding as well.
Okay. And Anna, are you willing to share with the group how it feels? Because at least I know you're nice and articulate. So if you don't mind, let's let people know what it feels like. What did it feel like?
So, I mean, I am already an anxious person, so it definitely gave me some anxiety, but I was very much in my own head. So I was talking too much about myself. And that's a thing that I think might be an issue, is that when we're talking to people, they might already have a bias about the park, and it might be difficult to bring yourself in and ignore everything you know about the park and only focus on their opinions.
What a champ. You're Mwah. And the other thing, Sue, is that scale. What are we doing about how did the other groups do with a scale? Kevin, speak up. Sue, how did you guys do with a 1 to 4? Oh my God.
I mean, for my group, I think it went very smoothly, actually.
Okay.
Our Tamara did a wonderful job of just saying, I'm going to ask you to rate some of the features of the park now. 4 is excellent, 1 is poor. If it doesn't apply, just let me know. And then they went through it. And I mean, it really wasn't as cumbersome as it normally feels. I think Tamara was really a pro with it, actually, because it went very quickly. So I was feeling more optimistic about the Likert scale because Suzanne and I have been sort of laboring over this and understanding it's information that is needed and wanted by the client, right? So, but I think it's possible to get through this and not have it be such an ordeal, actually. I mean, obviously, we don't want to go in and repeat the scale each time. But back to the point earlier, if we can make this really conversational, it went very smoothly for us.
Okay. I think if Anna, right, it was pretty hard to get, we were using Suzanne. I mean, that's another strategy to ask what they think and then you pick the number. Right? They say, well, I think it's fair. And then you circle fair rather than tell them it's on a 1 to 4.
So
I don't know.
interpret what they're saying.
Interpret what they're saying. It's another way. That's what Anna was doing. Anybody else? Who else was interviewing?
We had some conversation about how to get through the survey in the case that it's a first-time visitor.
Yeah.
And so then largely the questions largely don't apply. They don't have much to say about much of it, and whether it's okay to skip over or do it really quickly, or what are we doing in that case?
Well, what do you
I
think?
think oh, sorry.
Diana, do you want to weigh in here, or Patrick, or what do you want us to do? If it's the first time, do we skip? I mean,
Diana might be the best person to know, but I guess from my perspective, every park user's information is valuable. So even if they're new, it's just not applicable or up to the surveyor to kind of skip ahead.
Discussed, sorry, I was munching. So I had
Go
my
munch.
microphone. I think we had discussed, because if they are a first-time visitor, some of these questions aren't going to be appropriate to ask them, like, apart from summer, what other seasons do you come on a weekday or a weekend, what time of day? And probably we would program some sort of skip logic into the survey.
yes.
So that you can go straight to question 7 and just say, oh, so who did you come here with today? And then if they say, you can move on to the next set of questions.
Okay. That sounds right. I mean, yeah. And the one thing I thought about the lists, no, never mind. That seems like a good idea.
So we need to add that in, some more explicit skip logic, so that interviewees are not wasting time wondering what to do.
But I also think, Suzanne, it just comes with repetition. I mean, folks are going to be doing this when they realize it's a first-time visitor. It's not going to be hard to understand that we move on to question 7 or whatever. I mean,
right.
I think it's definitely for the QR code version. We need to keep that in mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And also, if someone is taking it on, is administering the survey using a cell phone or an iPad, they're going to be using an electronic form. So that can be built into the electronic form. I'm pretty sure Qualtrics does have skip logic that you can build into your surveys. The people who are taking it or administering the interview via paper, it might be good to just have some note, like skip to question 7, or maybe we have to reorder these questions, because I was just looking at question 9. It does say, if it's a first-time visitor, skip to question 10, because it's like, how long have you been coming to this park? So, and if it's a first-time visitor, we need to put, a little parentheses, skip to question 7 on. So it's kind of like interviewer instructions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probes. I think we could be clear. Like, I really liked Anna when Anna went back and just, asked what she would add, and of course, Suzanne came up with programming on like art classes, which is I would take too, do my watercolors there. I really resonate. And then what else, just to know that the probe is, well, okay, that's a great idea. What else might, and then she's got to write it in under other. I mean, she does need to know, but sketching classes in your parks, how fantastic. It's what I do here. I mean, I go to the flat, the gardens, they have watercolor.
Right. Great. This is good, really good feedback. And any other feedback that anyone wants to share about their observations of the fishbowl? These are some.
Renee has her hand up, I think.
Oh.
Renee? Is that Renee? Is that a hand? I see a hand and I see Renee. Renee, S-A-C-C-E-N-T-E. Do you want to unmute? All right. No. Whatever. Okay. I want to reiterate, as I said to Sue, it's not easy, right? It's just what happened to the other people who did the other interviewers?
Kelly, you want to say anything?
No, it was just different. Coming from the standpoint of being an environmental education assistant and out in the field, having to go up to random strangers and talk to them all the time, to just kind of relay information about the park or about different things that we're doing, or just doing kind of a random pop-up 5-minute program about something cool that we just saw. But it was just different doing it in this context where it's on a completely different subject that I'm used to talking to our park visitors about, with a scripted set of questions that I'm not normally asking them. So it's definitely an adjustment, but I think it's a worthwhile adjustment.
Okay, great.
A nice thing that that Kelly exhibited in her approach was just a mindfulness of the experience of the visitor, and anticipating information that they might want to know about in the park, as well as offering to make a note of some feedback that they had, for which there really isn't like she's checking things off, but people are saying more than what she's checking off. And and she felt that information was valuable, and sort of was very good at letting the respondent know that, they were really providing some information that was very valuable. So I think that kind of mindfulness of, how visitors are contributing to this process and letting people know it's a really good skill to have in the, in doing the interview.
I'd be really curious, Sue, in our last minute, if everybody who learned something new in this since the beginning, since 10 o'clock, since 9 o'clock, would everybody raise their hand if you learned something you didn't know or before this morning?
Or could you put a note in the chat as well?
Okay.
Raise your hand and put a note in the chat. What's something that you've learned that you didn't know before?
Oh, maybe that's even better, right? I just tried it for us to get some idea of, if this is in fact meeting your needs.
Please drop us a note in the chat. Something you learned that you didn't know before. If you learned something new.
If you learned something new. And if you didn't learn anything new, you should say, I didn't learn a new thing. I am expert. No, I don't mean that. I'm kidding.
Not to influence the patron when you interview. Save me the interview process.
Not a lot. Sounds like we got a lot of people who know a lot.
Yes, misunderstandings due to language differences.
While we're having these comments come in, I just want to acknowledge that Tamara has a role. I think, Tamara, you said in doing outreach. Is that correct at the park? You're accustomed to sort of speaking to strangers in the park, and it was just so evident in ways that you kind of repeated things that folks said, and also in ways that you put the person at ease. Tamara did a masterful job of just, adding to the comments that our pretend respondent made about, you know, suggestions. And I thought it was just a very fruitful kind of thing that it produced a lot of discussion, I thought, and I was really impressed. So I'm excited. So many of you have this experience of talking to strangers, which is so important for this kind of work. So thanks again.
That's great. Great.
I'd just like to say that just realizing to take yourself out of the conversation and focusing on the patron or the person that you're conducting the interview is a good way to get rid of any biases or any other like assumptions that you would potentially make. Was a good way that I didn't personally think of. All the times you talk to people, you never think about taking yourself out of the conversation or taking your, you know, the fact that you know, walk past that same building and see it falling apart, and you want to see if they notice that. So I felt that that was helpful for me when I eventually am out there talking to people, that I'm just gonna focus on them, get rid of me, because I can be anxious too and get a little nervous and probably either talk faster or, you know, try to point out things or and lead them potentially in a certain way, but focusing on them is helpful for me.
That's great. That's a great feedback. It's helpful. I enjoy hearing your words because it helps me as an interviewer, because I think sometimes in my own nervousness, I confuse rapport building strategies with listening. And so I have often, more often than I like to admit, find myself talking about my own, you know, my own opinion, like trying to show empathy by sharing a bit about myself, but it tips the scales sometimes, and I find myself talking about myself more, as I'm doing right now, than listening to what people are saying, you know, all in the name, ostensibly, of engendering rapport. So it's very tricky.
And I think John's comment also speaks to Setha's discussion of insider-outsider kind of knowledge, because you're making a concerted effort right now to say, I'm going to have to sort of remove my knowledge of the park or my knowledge of this building, the state of this, to be successful with this endeavor, which is really great kind of interrogation of what you're going to do.
That's great. Thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out. Yeah, that's very insightful. And John, that's absolutely right. You know, it's great to be an insider, but being too much of an insider, as you can see, doesn't allow you to hear anew, that each person is telling you anew about their experience. And that's hard for all of us to remember, but that's what we want to know. That's what we are asking them to tell us anew. How do you see this? Not how I see it, but how do you see it? And ultimately, you know, as Diana was saying, you know, since it's a centennial, and what, you know, thinking about the future.
Yeah. Patrick?
Yeah, I was just going to say to that point, Setha, there's a couple of comments in the chat about explaining to folks why we're collecting the data.
We need to say more.
Yeah, I think we're going to flesh out more of a script, but in our session, like you said, Diana was really good at like, oh, you know, the park system is turning 100, and we're starting to think to the future of what park goers might look like. So we're just asking people questions on what they like now and who they are, and this will help us plan for the next 100 years.
Yeah, I love that. So do we have that written down somewhere, Patrick? Have you written that specific link? Would you please write it down now while you're saying it? That's perfect.
That's where we're
Well done, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good thing we're recording this. We got you, Patrick.
Oh, that's true. It's recorded.
Yeah.
No, but that's why it was so helpful. Thank you so much for everyone. Again, Kevin said, now I'm saying thank you also to our fearless leaders and collaborators. You know, your insights are really so right on, as they could say. It's great. It's wonderful to be working with you. Just wonderful.
Terrific, terrific. So this is great, and thank you everyone for sharing your insights, and it's really exciting. I think we want to, if it's okay, I think it's time for us to shift to the final conversation that we wanted to have today, which is focusing on ethics as well as safety. And you know, in anthropology, there's a code of ethics that anthropologists follow in the profession. And we thought, oh, we should share this with you, you know, but then really, I think many people in the room have given ethics a lot of thought because of the role that they play in parks, especially the managers. And we thought maybe it'd be interesting to start talking about ethics from what we know already, and to maybe talk about, you know, the principles of ethics that are most important when either doing research with people and or interacting with people, you know, on a daily basis. What are some of the guiding principles in terms of, you know, sharing information and asking people for information that, you know, that sort of guide how we interact with the public. So what I'd like for us to do in this particular section of the training is I'd like to start with some of the park managers, if they would share some of their thoughts about this, and then the public space research group folks will share some thoughts about anthropology. And during this conversation, you'll see that that on in the folder on our Google Docs, we have a cheat sheet there of some principles of ethics that we want to abide by. And we want to invite everyone to comment on them, to add their thoughts to them. And I'll prompt you to do that after we hear a little bit from the managers and we talk a little bit about this topic. I reached out to some of the managers last night to see if they would be willing to talk, and some leaders in the park, if they'd be willing to talk about 3 questions: principal ethics and safety issues that have been most important to have in mind when conducting human subject research in the park. Ethical dilemmas. What ethical dilemmas have you encountered in your park when conducting other studies involving people or when interacting with the public in general? And what are your thoughts about, you know, ethical principles that should be most important to us in this particular project? Those are just 3 questions any of the park managers would comment on. Mike, I'm gonna call on you to start. Do you mind sharing your thoughts from your perspective?
I guess you've heard I've got the biggest mouth and the most to say. So yeah, I honestly, it's funny because when you first started talking ethics, I wasn't putting it in the context of how as pertaining to what we're doing. I just started looking at ethics across the board in parks, and I was like, whoa, I better slow down here because there's a lot more going on. But ethics in terms of this particular scenario, I'll speak from historically speaking. I was involved in a number of different surveys over the years with parks, and a couple of them in particular, the agency put forth and forget about like preparing us for that sort of setup like we're doing right now with this survey. It's just amazing the tools that we're being given now that, you know, we were just kind of thrown to the wolves back in the day. And unfortunately, I think without that extra training we're getting here now, the extra knowledge and support we're getting, I don't think those other surveys were really as accurate as they could have been with the information they were trying to gain, or the, you know, what they were trying to get out of the result, you know, the result of it. So I know, unfortunately, with myself, not that I did it, and I will claim exempt. We've actually, again, having quotas or goals that, oh, we need to get 300 surveys done or turned in. I've actually watched staff fill out the surveys on their own. And because they're anonymous, there's no specific, a way to prove that they were done anonymously, or that they were done by one person filling out 30 of them and then another person filling out another 30. Obviously, you can see the problems when it comes to that. So obviously, honesty and integrity when it comes to, the information we're trying to gain is of the, I think, pretty much the utmost importance to us, within keeping within the boundaries and not pushing the boundaries of the patrons that we're working with and stuff. The other issue I've seen over the years working with other people, and again, I have no problem approaching anybody. And again, I think from whoever the manager was, I said earlier, parks kind of sets us up to do that. And as managers or supervisors or dealing with the public, it's kind of something we're used to. So at the same time, I've worked in surveys where people have avoided certain groups because of, again, maybe a concern that, oh, I'm not going to be able to talk to this person, because, there's going to be a language barrier, or I just don't physically like the appearance of these people. So I don't want to approach them because it doesn't look like they're going to deal with me properly. So, making those, those off the cuff or those quick decisions just by physically or looking at somebody and then making those decisions, you're really skewing your results, I think, of what you could be getting. I think it's sometimes we're going to have to push ourselves out of our own comfort level. And like, again, so many have said already in this training is we've got to take our personal issues and biases out of this. And we've got, again, do we do absolutely every fifth person in a row? We know that in reality, that's not going to work that way, but we're going to try to stick to a game plan of that scenario, I think, so that, again, we can try to get as close to an accurate or unbiased view of what we're looking to do here. So those are my thoughts on it. Again, for better, for worse, again, like I said, the principles of it, honesty, integrity, sincerity, when dealing with the people, I think are some of the characteristics that, we're going to be looking at, and I'm going to be looking at for some of the folks that are going to be helping me tackle this project.
That's great. Wow, I really appreciate you sharing those insights. And just to underscore, I think honesty is really important. Do you think that these kinds of things happen because I don't know, there's sort of some disbelief that surveying or collecting data from the public is a meaningful exercise?
I think some of that, I wouldn't even go that far into it though, with a lot of them. I mean, again, a lot of the surveys that I've done in the past, I'm doing it with seasonals that are hired Memorial Day and they're laid off on Labor Day. They don't really have as much of, I would say, a vested interest. Their goal and their mindset is, I've got to get 300 of these done. That's what they're looking at down the road. That's what their sole purpose is. Whereas I think now, a manager, a supervisor, somebody that's vested in the parks agency and in what we do as a mission, I think is we really want the true information. Don't give me the fluff. Don't give me what I want to hear. I'm not the governor. I want to know exactly what's wrong. And, unfortunately, sometimes the truth hurts. Like, I'll read my patron comments and surveys that come in after a camping weekend, and, it hurts to hear negative stuff about your park or your facility. But at the same time, if you take the personalization out of it and you get to the heart of it, okay, maybe we do need to put hooks on the back of our bathroom doors so people can hang their towels up, or, whatever it is. Maybe we do need to pay more attention to the beach area after hours because of, swimming concerns, those sorts of things. But I think it comes down to just seasonals have less of an interest or a need or desire to get that accurate information, as much as, again, like myself, I'm definitely interested in it. I think other managers and other supervisors are as well.
So a theme I hear you saying is it's not only about valuing park visitors, but it's also valuing the researchers and the work that they're doing. Because if they're not valued, then maybe they won't do an honest job.
Well, that's it. It's going to be very important, I think, for all of us to make sure that whoever we pick and choose to be a part of this, who's not already on, like in this training with us, that we make sure that those individuals, they have the right mindset going into it, that they're not, again, going to, because again, I may be at one location and I may have somebody else at another location, and I might not be able to babysit or watch over them per se. I want to make sure that I'm comfortable that what they're doing is right by the survey, and again, which is ultimately then right by the parks in general.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. That's really, really helpful insights. How about another park manager? I don't know if Scott, can I put you on the spot? Do you have something you want to share around these issues?
Yeah, I think I think Mike did a really good job of summing it up. One thing I'll mention is if I'm going out there, I'm not going to be able to take off my park manager hat and turn a blind eye to things that may not be allowed in the park. So in terms of getting a non-skewed result from someone, if I see someone, like I mentioned earlier, blasting music, for instance, and I go up to them prior to doing the survey and I ask them to turn it down, well, I probably don't want to go get a survey for them because my feeling is that they're already going to be going into the survey with a negative feeling about the park. So that's something I'm going to try to avoid. At the same time, like I said, I can't take the hat off and turn a blind eye to things just for the survey.
Right. That was definitely a question that I had, that's sort of an interesting issue is when park managers or park employees are interviewing people and folks are doing tricky things that breaking rules, of one sort or another, how do you navigate that? Do you abandon the interview and address the rule, or do you overlook the rule and carry on with the interview? It's kind of it's a dilemma. Setha.
Yeah.
Scott, I need to think a little bit more about this, and if you don't mind, I'll write you because I really feel your dilemma and I'm really interested in it. But as a person who studies parks, a little bit of conflict can actually be good. Maybe not for you personally, but trying to understand the conflict. And I'm trying to figure out if there is any way for you both to take on your role of saying, the music is too loud and still doing the interview to get a sense of what they do like there. If there's any way to finesse, what they do like and why they're there, because my guess is it's really important. Maybe the whole family can get together. So I'm assuming that you could dance, you can finally hear music loud. And in that we could learn a little bit more about some of the situations that in fact most vex you, most problem you. Would you give me a little bit to try to put my thinking hat on to see if I could figure out any way for you to try to go ahead and tell them to turn the music down and then see if you could still have a conversation?
You can, but I mean, just my personal experience is the conversations always go south at that point. And myself and the seasonal staff and whoever's going to be helping us, if they have that feeling that this is going nowhere, which a lot of times it does, they should just abandon the ship and move on and do something more productive.
Okay, I hear you. Are these often people who are speaking Spanish, and do you speak Spanish?
I don't speak Spanish. No, I have staff here that do speak Spanish. We have an interpretation phone line that we can call people that we have a hard time communicating with, but that's not necessarily the issue majority of the time.
Okay, thanks.
It's pretty easy to impress on somebody that their music is too loud when they can't hear you. Or, for instance, when lifeguards' whistles are overdrowned by the music, or you can't hear the phone in the office because the music's so loud. I mean, that's just one minor factor of the things that go on in these facilities downstate.
Right. Well, and it's one of the biggest factors actually everywhere in the world right now, sound and conflicts over sound. So this is not just a minor issue, it's a big issue.
Thank you.
And one other thing that I think we should just mention is when you go into those questions, the demographic questions, I think we should just go into it and let people know before we even ask them that all the answers going forward are completely optional. And we don't, we're not trying to push anybody. So if you don't feel comfortable answering it, just let us know.
Yeah, I think that's important to know throughout the survey. The entire thing is optional and people can choose to not answer any number of questions.
Right.
Yeah, of course. That's an important aspect of informed consent. You want people to want to answer the questions. And if they don't, then, yeah, you cannot force people to. Diana, your hand is raised.
I wanted to kind of address what Scott was saying about enforcing rules versus, taking a survey. And Seth, I appreciate you trying to find out, try to reconcile that situation. I just want to point out at some point, it's not up to the surveyors who are not park police, they're not park rangers. They're not, there to enforce the rules. If they see somebody not complying with a rule or doing something dangerous or doing something illegal, they should be reporting it or making a note of an observation that this was going on and report it to park staff or park law enforcement, so that and don't approach that person personally. I mean, we've had situations where we have hunters in our parks and they're illegally using ATVs on our park properties, and park people get chased off of their patrols or whatever because their guns are loaded. That's illegal. They're not supposed to have loaded guns on an ATV, and they literally chase people off, chase park workers out. So you have to, at that point, engage law enforcement. That's an extreme situation, but I think we need to at least let our interviewers know that if they at all feel unsafe or they are not comfortable with something that a park visitor is doing, they should contact park staff immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that. Definitely safety is definitely really important. I saw Kevin was shaking his head.
No, I was nodding my head.
Yeah,
because we have a discussion on safety and security, Diana, and I'm so glad you brought it up. I think we have an obligation doing research always to not harm the people who are gracious enough to talk with us, but we also very much care about the folks who are conducting these surveys and want to place their safety and security at the, as a high priority, obviously. So we will address that also, but I'm so glad you brought it up. And gave me something else to worry about now, people with guns and ATVs. So glad I'll be thinking about that tonight. No,
Anna is asking, will the surveys be, what happened? Will the surveys be done only on the weekends? Just to quickly answer that, Anna, the answer is no. Each park is data is going to be collected on a weekday and a weekend. So only 2 days of data collection in each park. It's either a Friday and a Saturday, or a Sunday and a Monday. Those are the combinations. So 1 weekday and 1 weekend. Oh, thank you. Patrick wrote it right there. Sorry, I didn't read your comment. Any other comments on ethical principles that are especially important that are on the minds of park employees? We can open it up a little bit further. Any other sort of top principles that?
Sorry, yes, I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
That we were talking about. The reason I ask about weekends is that that's the time where we have police on call. And it's patrol. Yeah, it's patrol, but we have them on call, and I feel more comfortable when they're there. And if I'm doing surveys solo.
Mm-hmm. Police are on call on weekends.
Yeah, we only have state police officers doing like basically they do drive-throughs, but like they don't really, they're not the same as our park police was in the past.
Right, we don't have
So
park
there's a
police.
presence, but not always like in the same way that park police was. They're not walking on the pool deck anymore. Not that the park police would do that probably at this point in time anymore either, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I hear you. What park is this? Which park are you in?
State Park in Westchester County.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Your State Park in Westchester.
Okay.
Then we should at least give the interviewers, you know, the means to contact someone who can get in touch with law enforcement or park management.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Diana, and we can talk about this later, but in the next module 4, we're planning on putting together, you know, the phone chains, communication issues, you know, what if this happens, you know, who do I call, you know, who is my lead, who is on my team, and putting that information together so that people are prepared with, you know, some plans should we have some issues like that. And that would be we'll post that in another Google folder. So more about that coming up, but I think that's a good idea. So we've heard a little bit about ethics, ethical principles that are already, you know, high in our minds when working in parks. How about from the public space research group, Kevin, Setha, what of the many ethical concerns or principles, what do you think is like most important for people to be thinking about?
I've done a lot of talking. Kevin, you go ahead. Or
Sure. I mean, I just think the idea of safety and security is always at the forefront for me. But in terms of ethics, I love that Michael brought up the idea of honesty and so willingly and it was so transparent about what can happen when you're out there doing a job and it's really hot and people are being rude perhaps and you're tired. The sort of pressure to fudge results is a real thing, right? And you were very honest about that, which I appreciate. I would say in that scenario, it's really important to remember that we would rather have fewer interviews than fake interviews. And we would rather that if you're feeling uncomfortable in any way because things are getting too much, please do come to the lead on that day from Public Space Research Group. We can offer suggestions, we can shadow, we can do some of the surveys with you, and we can also just hang out until you feel more comfortable. But the goal is that we do want a very transparent and honest approach to all of this. So I was so grateful that you brought that up, Michael. And I guess you also sort of, you know, talked about the value of the training here, which is well received and much appreciated. Talking about having been thrown to the wolves, more or less, right? Which is, so that really struck me. And then the idea of competing ethical obligations, right? Like, Scott, you've talked about, I have an obligation to enforce rules. And we have an obligation to the client who wants us to collect data. And you working as a park manager, there's going to be a conflict. And so you've already got, you know, professionals here with Diana and Setha and so forth, trying to really work through this and think about it. So I love that you brought that up because this is why we're here to have these discussions. And we will come up with some strategies for that. Setha, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah,
I keep going.
Yeah, no, I was thinking for me, I mean, I think my experience with John and Anna is I would turn to respect, you know, to this idea to interrogate your own biases as you approach others. A number of people have really already said this, but you need to respect yourself that gets you to safety. And, you know, you need to respect that people are different from you. One of the most important reasons you're doing this is to learn actually that other people may have other feelings about the park than you do, and that's why we're doing this. So to respect people, and as you approach them by leaving your biases behind and thinking more about that. Respect identities, don't judge the visitors. And what we sort of touched upon is interviewing can be felt by interviewees to be an extractive process. That's a relatively recent term. It comes out of Black Lives Matter and really rethinking the racist basis of the United States, but that research in general is a form of extraction. You are asking for something from someone else. So the respect becomes incredibly important to try to both be honest about that, but also sort of the ethics involved, which get me to the other point, which is really tricky, Diana, which is confidentiality, at least for anthropologists. And I'm an anthropologist who's worked in parks, you know, since a long time, really long time. By my rules, by anthropological ethical rules, I should not tell the police or the park manager if I see something illegal. And indeed, if I had done that in the plaza in Costa Rica or in many of the parks, I wouldn't have learned the things that I needed to learn. Now, I'm a scholar, and you know, that my goal is to respect everyone, including those people who are not doing things that are necessarily legal, because as you can see in my work and what I've written and what we have written, Suzanne, Dana, and I, in Rethinking Urban Parks, which is about big parks and cultural diversity, that sometimes it's a person who's doing something illegal like drinking who may save the life of the elderly woman who is in the park every day. That the social relations that develop in parks, including even big state parks, though less often than city parks, are complicated, and that there is a kind of ecology that evolves that is protective of often vulnerable people. And it's often my shoeshine men who smoke marijuana sometimes on the Parque Central are the ones actually who kept the level of crime down, because once they were removed, it became much more dangerous. So that there are these contradictions here. And I think we go by park rules, but I'd written to Suzanne that true confidentiality includes that, of course, people's names aren't there, but that if you interview someone and you can see, because you're interviewing them, that they're doing something illegal and you report it, that's complicated for us. It's something that I personally, based on my professional ethics, could not do. I'm sorry to bring it up, but yeah, Diana.
That's not necessarily what I was talking about.
Okay.
If you're trying to keep biases out, I understand that. If they're doing something illegal and they're supposed to be one of the selectees for your survey, use caution approaching them. I mean, but being a state employee, and most of us here are state parks employees, we kind of have an obligation not only to the visitors, but also to the resources that we work in. So
right,
I
agree. Yeah.
You know, I was just saying that, you know, maybe you're interviewing someone who could be or couldn't be doing something illegal, or something that you don't believe in. You know, maybe they're smoking and you don't smoke. You can't discriminate against them for doing that, because we're trying to collect information about all of the particular, you know, all the diversity and the variety of individuals who come to our parks. But I mean, if there is like a knockdown, drag out fight,
Yeah.
or if like I mentioned before, you've got someone who's riding an ATV in a park where it's not permitted, you need to report those types of things.
I actually live on town land where people ride those ATVs and hunt and carry guns. So I am very familiar with what you're talking about. Of course, I just get out of their ways. I find them terrifying, but I think you're right.
Yeah, don't ever approach them.
Don't
just
approach them.
walk away.
Well, I have on occasion, I get my backup, but I live here.
We've even told our state parks employees don't approach them because we've had situations where they come after you.
Okay, that makes everybody feel really good and safe. I was thinking, Sue, do you want to?
It was probably not a good idea to end this training talking about personal safety.
No, I don't know. And I was sorry to bring it up, but I think I also think what's exciting about this, and I hope it's exciting for you, the listeners, is that there are different, we come with different skills and we come with different ethical backgrounds and professional ways of being. And so there's so much to learn here, not just about how to interview and how uncomfortable it can be, and that no, it's not easy. And yes, you need to respect people. And yes, you need to get out of your own way and all of that. But you're also learning that we all have, been trained differently, and that we're all going to work together as a team. And this is part of our team building.
Yeah. So it's great. These are, I agree with you. I think these different points of views are important just to keep in mind. I think we might all be able to agree, though, I hope that, like taking care of people is ultimately really important, taking care of yourself, and, also helping others if they're in distress or something like that. That is actually more important, I think, than the survey. So we should keep those issues of safety in mind, both for ourselves and for others. We're going to end here in just a few minutes, and I wanted to point out that we have a document, as I said before, in Google Docs where we have listed some of the principles of the code of ethic as it's informed by the American Anthropological Association. And the document in our files is a live document. And so I want to invite folks, when they have time, to review it and just comment right on the document. I can make another one that's static that we can use that won't be distracting, but I think it'd be nice in light of this conversation for people to add to it, add other thoughts, add examples of ethical dilemmas, concerns, questions, anything that you think that the team would benefit from thinking about as we think about what are the guiding principles of ethics that we need to be aware of. There's, as we're saying to ourselves in this conversation, there are many dimensions to it and many different sort of ways of expressing ethical principles. And so it doesn't make sense for us to come in here and say, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, because in fact it's way more complicated when you're in a situation. You have to think through, what do I do? What are my priorities? So this conversation is meant to help you think through some of those things, and also to remind you, you're not alone out there. You're with a team, and you're with leads, and with backups to the leads, backup to the team, backup to the leads, backup to the the whole project. So we are not alone in facing these dilemmas. And I hope that we can continue to talk about them and especially address them when we're in the field. So please do take a look at that document when you have a chance and drop in some comments there, which everyone can read, and it would be really helpful to the conversation. I saw in the chat that there were some other questions. Tamara is asking a question for question 11, where the interviewer asks a park user to rate aspects of the park, it might be helpful to add a general question at the end, or even mention at the beginning that we would like for them to expand on aspects that they give a low score to. I think that's a really good point. I think with the follow-up question tomorrow, which is at this moment, it is called number 14. I think that's an area where you can make a note and to that effect of, you know, why there's a low score, and get people to expand on it. The leads, remember that the leads are going to be helping out, but they're also going to be collecting data separately, and they're using a much more open-ended, semi structured interview, and they're going to be able to pick up more of those sorts of things. We wanted to make this as easy as possible, and anytime you're going to have to write an answer is going to add time and to the, you know, add time to getting through the survey. So just keep that in mind. I think you're right. We do want to know why people give low scores. And so try to write your answer in to the extent that it's possible to do that in an efficient way. Are there any other questions here that anyone wants to ask about? A kitten walking across the keyboard. I see. Yes. Any other comments or questions before we wrap up today? Patrick, Diana, any? Yeah.
I'm just going to apologize to Mike about being blindsided on surveys. It's probably come out of my shop at some point.
All right, Diana, you owe me, girlfriend.
But now you know you have us as part of the team, you know, Diana. I mean, you know, send a graduate student can come. I mean, you know, you guys have got us. You had us 10 years ago, and now we're here for you when you need us. And hopefully, you know, part of this whole rigmarole, the training, you're all wondering, why are we here? Why are we here? Well, if this goes well and this helped, then you have it, you're trained. It's going to be so much easier to do it on your own, or maybe Sue and we come in to do a lecture, you know, we just do a get together, you know, some sort of thing, and everybody's ready to go, you know, and we do an hour get together or do a little training to refresher course, but you've got it. These are skills you've got. If we've improved them at all, then that was what, not only the data are important, but what do you call it? You know, having everybody learn to do it well, and then knowing also you have backup. That's all.
It's learning a skill.
Yeah. A discipline, I call it a discipline.
That's true too. Go ahead.
I call it a discipline, everyone, because why? It's because you do have to really monitor yourself. You know, it's not just a skill, the discipline of like not talking too much, you know, which I never learned.
Patrick.
If I could just piggyback off what Setha was saying, in addition to the skills that folks have been picking up, I know we're coming in these at different levels, but also it's been great to see everybody across the state. I know I feel like I don't have a chance that often. I'm usually just stuck at my desk at Albany, but to get a chance to spend a few hours with folks, you know, all the way out in Western New York, folks on the Thousand Islands and the downstate folks too. I really appreciate everybody committing to this training, and also on Friday's call if you're able to. Again, this is a huge project and a huge undertaking, but know that you're backed up by some of the best folks in the field. Small plug for Setha's book if you haven't read it already, as well as the other folks on staff that are helping to survey. I think this will turn out to be a great source of information for the agency, as well as, you know, a great project for everybody involved.
That's great. And so this, thank you for saying that. And also Diana and Mike for that exchange. And is a great way to kind of segue to wrapping up today's training and to pointing to some next steps that are coming. And I just really like this discussion about what I feel like we're trying to nurture here is a culture of data collection. You know, we've talked a lot about, you know, a culture of evidence-based decision making, but, you know, where does the evidence come from? What's the culture around around engendering, you know, the collection of really good evidence? And I feel like this party is, you know, really you know, a testimony to the value of doing that. So it's going to be an exciting summer in that regard. So what's coming up next is we call it module 4, but really what it is to speaking to Patrick's idea of just like knowing what's going on across the state is you'll be receiving some information about joining Trello. So we're developing a Trello site where all of these training recordings and materials will be posted there, as well as information about the schedule, as not everybody is working all weekends. You know, we're going park by park throughout the summer. I just wanted to clarify that because I know some people were saying at the end of Friday, oh my gosh, I thought I was just doing this one weekend or 2 days, and I'm hearing people are doing this all summer. So, you know, everyone is on a different schedule, but each park is going, as I said before, will be visited 2 days, a weekday and a weekend, beginning around July 14th and ending in theory sometime in August. And so on this Trello site, what we hope to do is to take photos of us, you know, throughout the summer doing the work, you know, telling stories about how it's going and showing the evolution of this project throughout the summer through photos and commentary, and having a place where we can store notes on best practices and any other information that we need, protocols, for example, safety in particular parks, the schedule, when is my team going to the field. So that's one thing you're going to get some information on. That's kind of going to be our office collectively for all of us for this project. Trello is our office where we will store and post information and add to it as the summer evolves.
To Patrick's point, right, this is a way of connecting folks across the state.
Exactly.
Creating a community sense for all of the park workers.
Exactly. And there's been so much sharing already, and I think there'll be, you know, we'd like to continue to share. So show everybody what we're accomplishing and what we're learning through this process. So Trello will be our site for that. Another thing that will happen in module 4 is, and so I need for people to be on standby, is you'll get some information from your lead. And the who is your lead is posted already in the Google folder. But you'll be getting an email from your lead to do some further coordination. For example, we're going to need to know where we're meeting and what time we're meeting. We're going to need to know, what do we do if it rains? Are we collecting data and so forth? Or if there's some other event that's happening that might conflict, we need to be in communication with one another. And as we said earlier today, that there's still some things that need to be worked out. What are the best places for us to work? What are the best times, and how many of us are going to be there? How many of us are working in any one park will dictate how long any of us have to stay and what time we have to do it. Basically, we would like to collect data again on a weekday and a weekend. On the weekdays, starting at 8 in the morning and ending at 5. Now, if we have lots of people, you know, we'll see how we can parse it out. On this weekends, we'll start at 9 and end at 6. And these are very long days, but the idea is, as people have pointed out, that parks have their ecology and different people come and go and have different views of the park at different times of the day. And so we want to capture the early birds and the folks who come later in the day, as they have different styles and different ways of dealing, of engaging in the park. And so we need to be there when the people are there. Again, if we have more people to help out, we can parse it out in ways that make sense. If it's just a small team of 1 or 2 people, we're going to have to be there during those times, 8 to 5 and 9 to 6. This, though, will be reiterated and confirmed through your leads. You'll get an email from them. I also want you to know that the leads are, if you haven't noticed this already, kind of friendly people. So there's no question that's too small to ask. And just by shooting an email to myself or to Kevin, Dana, Setha, or Nathan, all questions will be answered. Everybody is happy to hear from you. So those are the updates that will be coming to you in Module 4. So be on the lookout from an email from us, and be on the lookout for some information regarding Trello. If Trello is new to you, don't let it frustrate you in terms of getting on. Email me, email Kevin, Dana, any of us will help you. We'll get on Zoom with you and just kind of walk you through it and get it, going, because it's the place to be this summer for our project. And we don't want anybody to tear their hair out and get frustrated. And there's plenty of reasons to get frustrated these days. Too many apps. I don't know. I don't know if you have, there must be a word for that syndrome when you have to keep coming up with new passwords and, and Duo, and I don't know, it can be fatiguing. And so I wouldn't blame anybody for getting frustrated. So just reach out and we'll get you on Trello. We'll get your questions answered. Tamara is asking, are the start and end times for the survey, and therefore we may need to come in earlier and actually leave at the end of that time. If it's just, if it's just one person, if it's just one field researcher and the lead, possibly we might need to start at those times. Possibly we might start later. Possibly we might leave early if we accomplish what we need to do. But I think the lead will be able to confirm specifically the start time. But again, I just really want to underscore that we don't have a lot of opportunities to collect the data. And so we do need to, show up and aim to collect, our 30 to 35 per day that we're in the field. Otherwise, we won't have the numbers and we won't be able to have solid data. But again, that also doesn't mean that we should fudge it. We want to do good work. The public deserves it, and the parks will make good use of the information. That is for sure. Anything else? Any other questions, burning questions, comments? Anna and John, it looks like you're having so much fun over there.
No, we were actually just talking about how sweet you guys were.
Yeah.
And how excited you all are.
It's refreshing to have non-park eyes and ears to experience what we deal with on a daily basis and try to put it to a more positive venue is very inspiring and exciting for the summer.
We're excited.
We're very excited for this.
That's so nice to hear. And my comment was just going to be to thank Anna and John and Michael and Scott and Kate and whoever else I'm forgetting for these on the ground experiences. They're going to mean so much to me when I'm out there. And I'm going to be deferring to your knowledge about the space and the culture of the place. And I'm really looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Right. And just also know you're adding to knowledge for the whole world. I mean, just you want to blow it up. Suzanne, Dana, and I did a book called Rethinking Urban Parks about cultural diversity. It wasn't about state parks. It was about national parks and city parks. And then the second book is Why Public Space Matters, really focuses on state parks, because that's what we had just done research on. And who knows what will come next, what you will learn, we can share with people who are concerned about park parks all over the world. I mean, there's a big, Anna, John, there's a big world of people who love parks. There's a World Park Organization that meets in the UK. There are parkies everywhere and who know the importance of what you do and care about it. So I sometimes think it's hard, you know, you're in your own small space, but there is a world of people who care about parks. They don't always, it's important to remind people, but what you do is important.
Yeah, it's exciting as a young student to meet with all of these anthropologists and scientists. It's very.
I have to run, everybody, so I want to thank you.
Yep. Okay. That's our cue. Lunchtime. Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
everyone. We'll be in touch. Have a good afternoon. Ciao, ciao. Bye. Bye, Mike. I will see you. All right. Bye-bye. Bye, John. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for participating.